The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. So, does anyone have any New Year's resolutions? Anyone do that? Anyone? Just me? Am I the only one who does? You do New Year's? I do. I like New Year's resolutions. Mine is a dry January, but it has more to do with ice cream. That kind of wet than it does any. Because December I let myself eat whatever I want. And then January, I'm like, whoa, buddy, slow down, kiddo. You know what I mean? I started getting into that, eyes get crossed from too much sugar kind of thing. So I'm like, all right, time to slow down. I like resolutions because there is something about always becoming. There's something about always wanting to become and grow into something new. And we look for seasons to do this, and it's okay to discover those seasons. And so, the turning of one year to the next is a good season to think about what does the coming year mean for me? What does this coming year, what am I to look forward to, and who am I to become in the coming year? Looking at the text today, it's an interesting story. Now, we very rarely get to use this text as a part of our Sunday worship because, as I mentioned, it's the 13th day after Christmas, and depending on where Christmas is during the week, we really only read the text of the Magi once every 6 to 11 years. So it can be almost a decade that we read the story of the Magi. It can be almost a whole decade. In fact, the last time we read it was 2019, and the next time we would read it wouldn't be until 2030. And so we brought this text today. It's not the assigned text today, but we brought it because our head and our minds tend to associate the wise men with the story of Christmas. Yes? It tends to be associated with this text. And so we thought it would be good to highlight this text again. And besides, the text was assigned for this week. We just did on Christmas Eve. So we said, let's bring a different text. Let's bring something else and talk about it. So let's take a look at this text. So the first thing that you need to understand is that the story of Jesus' birth, there's 4 Gospels, and each one has a different kind of story. John doesn't mention anything about Jesus' birth. Doesn't mention a thing about it. So we just kind of set John aside. It wasn't John's agenda, was to talk about Jesus' birth. Mark kind of goes, Jesus was born. That's it. That's kind of as much as Mark gives you. But then Matthew and Luke give a more full narrative, but they're two very different stories. They're very different stories. Now, the story of Luke, if you were here for Christmas Eve, that was the story you would have heard. It's the story of the shepherds. So it's this story of the angels coming and appearing to the shepherds, to the poor of Israel, and visiting them out in the fields, not to the kings and queens and the rich, but to the poor shepherds in the field, and drawing them to see the baby lying in a manger. And so that's the story that we heard on Christmas Eve. Matthew doesn't even mention the shepherds. Matthew has nothing to do with the shepherds. Matthew instead talks about these, what you heard today called wise men. Wise men. Now, the word for wise men in Greek is just magioi. Magioi. So the root word is magi, and then oi just means plural. So, and wise men it's a difficult word to translate. It's where we get the word magic, M-A-G-I, magic. So I've actually heard it translated as magicians, but that doesn't work for our culture. You know what I mean? Because it makes you think, hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. You know, it makes you kind of think of David Copperfield and like, can you see them going around doing 3-card Monte or, you know. It's not that kind of magic. Wise men is a little closer. One of the places it gives you the idea of astrologer is one of the texts, gives you that suggestion that this is like an astrologer, somebody who sees the stars. But when we think of magic and these particular people, who they were was people who were able to observe nature and creation and portents. They were attuned to something in the world that drew them into the story of what God was doing beyond just their little scope. And so in looking at what they saw in the world, they saw this star. And the star drew them into a new story. So it says that these magi came to visit, and they came to Herod first because Herod was the king, and they would assume that the king would know that the new king was born. And so they came and said, hey, we saw the portents in the sky. We saw what was happening. Who is coming and where are they? And Herod didn't know. So Herod was left out of the loop and became afraid because Herod was not a good leader and pretty much was the kind of person who just wanted to hold on to power. And so he called together his scribes and they said, where would the king be born? And they said, Bethlehem. And it wasn't just because of that one particular prophetic text, but because it said that because David was born of Bethlehem. And because David was a part of Bethlehem, from that tribe would come the new king, the new Messiah. And so Herod tells them, go and visit Bethlehem, and there you will find the new Messiah, the new king. So it says they follow the star, they continue to observe their creation, and it rests on the place where it says Jesus lay. And so they visited. Now, it says they came to the house. Did you hear that? It says they came to the house. Now, how many of you have the little magi with the manger? Yeah? Sorry. What probably happened was that Mary and Joseph, when they went to do the census wouldn't have happened like overnight. It's not like you go online and you click in and somebody visits your house and counts and then you go. It probably would have happened over a great period of time. So Joseph and Mary and Jesus probably would have gone to Bethlehem, and they would have stayed there for a couple of years. They would have moved in with family because Joseph was of the house of David, meaning he would have had relatives in Bethlehem, and he would have moved into their home, into their guest house, and probably joined the work and the craft of that particular family. You know, tending olive trees or doing the craft or doing the work that family did. They would have joined them on the family farm, and they would have stayed there for years. So when it says that the Magi came, it says they came and saw a child, not a baby. So Jesus was probably not a baby in a manger, but a little child that came. And this child is the one that Jesus visited. It says that they brought him then 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And I'll just let you know, that's the only reason why we say 3 wise men, is because there are 3 gifts. We actually don't know. It's just wise men plural, astrologers plural, magi plural. We don't know if it's 3 or 10 or 50, but we say 3 because of the 3 gifts. So what happens from this little story is a much greater narrative. I'd say adding a myth and legend onto this gets kind of gets kind of populated onto these three magi. But I think these myths and legends actually tell us something very, very important that Matthew wants us to understand. You see, one of the very cool things about Matthew telling us this story is that when you have Matthew and Luke, these two gospel narratives, Luke is typically seen, am I boring you yet? Are you okay? Okay, good. I just want to, so hang with me. This is important. Luke is typically thought of the more Greek and Gentile gospel. That typically Luke's audience would have been other Gentiles. And there's lots of ways and words that Luke uses that are different than Hebrew words. So we're pretty sure, and Luke, by that name, is a Gentile name. So Luke is very Gentile. Matthew is very Jewish. And we know it's very Jewish, and you heard it today, because over and over in Matthew here it says, in order to fulfill the prophecy that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because Matthew is trying to convince the people in Judea, the Jewish people, that Jesus was the Messiah. So Matthew is written to the Jewish people. So why would Luke, the Gentile, not have the story of the three wise men? But Matthew would. It's because Matthew wants to communicate something to the Jewish people that's important for them to know about the vision of God. So the legend kind of grows on this. I've got a picture that I want to show you. This is a picture written by a guy named J. Feckenmeyer. Now, besides having the best first name ever, he was a famous illustrator who did like Saturday Evening Post, and he did like Harper's Weekly, and he did these incredible artistic pieces of work. And I think this is a particularly interesting picture because it describes what kind of became of the story of what we call now the three wise men. First of all, we gave them names. Does anybody know what those names? Somebody knew it last time. I remember Lori knew it last time. Do you know what the three names are? What are they? Yeah, Melchior, Gaspar, and Balthazar, Melchior, and Caspar are the three, or Gaspar. Where did those names come from? Just kind of out of the universe, out of the ether. They decided there's three people, we should probably give them names, and these sound kind of foreign, right? They sound kind of foreign. They sound a little different. And so these names were associated, but the names also show us a little bit about how what eventually became the story about the three magi and what was important about them. So let's take a look at the first one. So the first one you'll see is somebody who's clean shaven, right? So somebody who has no beard. And notice what he's wearing. There's sort of these kind of blue robes, and notice he has this headdress on that has these eagles, this kind of hawk or falcon on his head. This is to represent the East, Egypt, Persia, Babylon, east of where Jerusalem is. So it represents the East. And the gift that this first one brings is the gift of gold. So the first gift is a gift of gold. Now, gold is a symbol of power, of wealth, of authority. The one who has is a gift. And so this idea, the first gift is to say that the Christ, the one that I'm bringing this gift to, is one of power and authority. One of power and authority. So this first gift is gold. Now look at the second one. The second one, you notice that he has a big white beard. Looks a little like Santa Claus wearing all red. Did you know that this is the artist that invented the red bearded Santa Claus? He's the one who did that first one, so that's where we get that from. So he kind of looks like Santa Claus, right? Looks a little like Santa, but also notice that his skin is more pale. This one represents Europe. It represents north. It represents what was up above. And the gift that this one brings is frankincense. Frankincense is a very particular kind of ointment that comes as a sticky tree sap that kind of crystallizes. Well, they take this sap, they mix it with different kinds of fats, and they rub it over the one who is to be anointed. Anointed in Hebrew is Messiah. In Greek, it's the Christ. So Christos and Messiah are the same word, just one is Hebrew, one is Greek. And so calling this one with frankincense is to signify that this is the Messiah, the anointed one. And so from the north, they come and call this one the Messiah. And now look at the last one. What does the last one look like to you? It's got dark skin. He looks like a Bedouin. This represents Africa. So south, going to Africa. And the dark skin, the black skin there, and the picture of the turban and all of that kind of sense of what Africa is like. So the sense of Africa, east into Asia, and Europe. And now what the last one brings is this gift called myrrh. Now myrrh is a perfumed oil that is very, very pungent. It has a very strong smell. The way I think of it is like Drakkar Noir. Do you remember that kid who came into class wearing the Drakkar Noir and you're like, Spencer, you overdid it this week. You know what I mean? It just kind of knocks you off the gut truck. You know what I mean? It's a very powerful smell. It's a very powerful smell. And the reason that this was important is that this was an oil that they used to bury people because it was powerful enough to help overcome the smell of decomposition and of dying bodies. And so the first one represents power and authority. The second one represents the Messiah. This one represents the Christ who is to die. The Christ who is to die for his people. The Christ who comes to bring the people home. So what the legend becomes about these three wise men, not really three, but these wise men, was that these are the nations. These are the people from all over who still are seeing and hearing and perceiving what God is doing in the world. That this vision that God has isn't just for the people who are good enough, the people who do the right things, the people who are blessed and who have specialness gifted upon them. It's not just for the Jewish people. It's not just for the Lutherans. This is a gift for all. That the vision that God has from the very beginning is that people will be gathered from all over to come. We read it in Jeremiah, did you hear? From the north, from the east, from the far ends of the earth, they will all be gathered together, back to Zion, back to home. That this was the initial vision of what God had for the creation, for all of us, for all time. That the picture that we have here is of a universal Christ. Not a Christ who comes just for very particular and specific and good people, but the one who comes for all of us. And y'all, all means all. If it's not all, it's not all, right? You can't say all asterisk. It's all. And so when we say all means all here at Abiding Hope Church, we don't mean all means some. We mean every last person is a known, blessed child of God. And we don't do this because we're woke or because we're kind of fluffy or we just don't want to be mean or we just, you know what I mean? We do this because this is the vision of God that God has given us from the very beginning, and we either come alongside of that or we got an argument with God. Are you with me? I mean, we write it on our altar. It says, on this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all people, a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wines. This is a vision that God has given for us. And so we should not be surprised that all means all, that all comes together, and that we are called to be the people who proclaim a message of hope, freedom, joy, and belonging to all. Amen? So our 2026 theme for Abiding Hope Church is love all, serve all. You've heard that before? You've heard us say that before? I was a little confused the first time I came here because that's on the wall at Planet Hollywood. It says love all, I was kind of like, what are we doing this? This is a little confusing. But I love that before that we added the love God, serve God. Love all, serve all. And what I see that as one demands the other. That if we're coming to love God and to serve God, guess what that means for you? That you're here to love all and serve all, because that's what it means to love and serve God. That means to love the people you don't want to love, to love the people that disagree with you, the ones that drive you crazy, the ones that you're like, why are they like that? Those are the ones that we are called to love, And if you're not ready to love them, pray that someday you'll be ready to love that one. So your New Year's resolution, I've got one for you. We say it every Sunday here, so you can be reminded all year long. Love all and serve all. If you'll pray with me. Lord God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, on paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out in good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. In the name of love, whose name is Jesus. Amen.